Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah wa salatu salam ala Rasulullah. We'll continue reading from Imam Al-Ghazali's The 99 Beautiful Names of God, Al-Maqsad al-Asna fi Sharh Asma'illah al-Husna, translated by David Burrell and Nazih al-Dahir. We are at the very beginning of chapter 4, explaining how the perfection and happiness of man consists in conforming to the perfections of God Most High and in adorning himself with the meanings of his attributes and names insofar as this is conceivable for man. This is top page 30. We continue reading. Imam Ghazali rahimahullah said, "You should know that whoever has no part in the meanings of the names of God, great and glorious, except that he hear the words and understand the linguistic meaning of their explication and their determination, except that he believe with his heart in the reality of their meanings in God Most High. Such a one has an ill-fated lot and a lowly rank, bakhis, and ought not boast of what he has achieved. For hearing the words requires only the soundness of the sense of hearing, through which sounds are perceived, and this is a level in which beasts share. As for the understanding of their determination in language, all one needs is knowledge of Arabic, and this level is shared by those adept in language and even by those Bedouin who are ignorant of it. For the Bedouin, it's بل الغبي البدوي on the level of the language. So it cannot be that that this Bedouin does not know, as it is translated here. So let's try to fix it. So what should we say? This knowledge of Arabic and this level is shared by those adept in language, adib, and even by those Bedouins who are ignorant of it. No, even by a Bedouin who is, let's use a modified word. Like if we talk about the Bedouin, even an unlearned Bedouin, okay, or even if we follow Imam Ghazali's exact wording, it'd be a stupid Bedouin would still know the language. Okay, this is really what it means. Which is true. In terms of, if you are talking about that level of language, you hear it. If that's your share, you are sharing the same with the literati and also the stupid Bedouin. Imam Ghazali wanted to drive the idea that that kind of knowledge is not sublime. That's the whole story. As for faith affirming their meanings of God may be praised and exalted without any revelatory vision. All one needs is to understand the meaning of the words and to have faith in them. And this level is shared by common people, even by young boys. For once one has understood the teaching, if these meanings were presented to him, he would receive them and memorize them, believe them in his heart, and persist in them. These are the levels of most scholars, to say nothing of those who are not scholars. In relation to those who do not share with them in those three levels, these should not be denied credit, yet they are clearly deficient and respect to the acme of perfection. For the merits of the merely pious are demerits in those who have drawn near to God. And it's a beautiful phrase in Arabic, of course. فإن حسنات الأبرار سيئات المقربين. فإن حسنات الأبرار سيئات المقربين. Indeed, those who have drawn near to him share in the meanings of the names of God the Most High in a threefold way. The first, of course, this is not without controversy, because most people will not understand what Imam Ghazali is trying to say. Especially is like, and he does mention it, nothing is like unto him. It doesn't mean that you are, this is not really. Um, it's not that the human being is becomes God or similar in any way, except that the notion itself is you partake. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that uh, you talk about mercy. The Prophet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the merciful, but he also described the Prophet sallallahu that he is a mercy to the world. Okay, Rahmat al-Alam. And بالمؤمنين رؤوف الرحيم, while Ar-Ra'uf is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Ar-Rahim is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's but let's continue the argument of Imam Ghazali. The first share is a knowledge of these meanings by way of witnessing and unveiling, so that their essential realities are clarified for them by a proof which does not permit any error, and God's possession of these meanings as God's characteristics is revealed to them in a disclosure equivalent in clarity to the certainty achieved by a man in regard to his own inner qualities, which he perceives by seeing his inward aspect, not by outward sensation. How great a difference there is between this and the faith derived from one's parents and teachers by conformity, taqlid, and persistence in it, even though it be accompanied by argumentative proofs from Kalam. Second way of sharing in these meanings belongs to those who so highly esteem that is disclosed to them of the attributes of majesty, that their high regard releases a longing to possess this attribute in every way possible to them, so that they may grow closer to the truth in quality, not in place, and with the possession of such characteristics they become similar to the angels who have been brought near to God, great and glorious. Moreover, it is inconceivable that a heart be filled with high regard for such an attribute, and be illuminated by it without a longing for this attribute following up upon it, as well as a passionate love for that perfection and majesty, intent upon being adorned with that attribute in its totality, inasmuch as that is possible to one who so esteems, and if not in its totality, the esteem for this attribute will necessarily provoke in him the longing for as much of it as he can assimilate. No one will lack this longing except for one of two reasons: either from an inadequate knowledge and certainty that the attribute in question is one of the attributes of majesty and perfection, or from the fact that one's heart is filled with another longing and absorbed by it. For when a disciple observes the perfection of his master in knowledge, longing will be triggered in him to be like him and to follow his example, unless he be filled with hunger, for example, so that the preoccupation of his innards for food could prevent the longing for knowledge from arising in him. So it is necessary for the one who would contemplate the attributes of God Most High to have emptied his heart of desiring anything except God, great and glorious. For knowledge is the seed of longing, but only to the extent that it encounters a heart freed from the thorns of the passions. For unless the heart be empty, the seed will not bear fruit. You are going to plant your seeds in fertile land after weeding the thorns. We talk about weeding. This metaphor of weeding, we should uh, always keep it uh, very handy. It does help. The third share follows upon the effort to acquire whatever is possible of those attributes, to imitate them and be adorned with their good qualities. For in this way man becomes lordly, that is, close to the Lord Most High, and so becomes a companion to the heavenly host, Al-Mala al-A'la, of angels, for they are on the carpet of proximity to God. Indeed, whoever aims at a likeness to their qualities will attain something of their closeness to the extent that he acquires some of their attributes which bring them closer to the truth Most High, closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Al-Haq. Now you may say seeking closeness to God subhanahu wa ta'ala by way of attributes is so obscure a proposal that hearts are at the point of recoiling from accepting it or from believing in it. So you should develop an explanation to diffuse the vehemence of those who reject it. For to the majority, this will be considered to be forbidden unless its truth be disclosed. To which I say, it is not a secret to you, nor to a scholar who has developed even a little above the level of the common scholar, that existing things are divided into perfect and imperfect, and that the perfect are nobler than the imperfect, and that no matter how different the degree of perfection may be, ultimate perfection is limited to one, and one is written with capital letter. so that no one is simply perfect but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Other existing things do not have perfection simply, but different perfections belong to them in relation to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. For there is no doubt that a thing is more perfect the closer it is to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to He who has perfection simply, closer, that is, in degree and in level, not in perfection to court. Existing things are divided into animate and inanimate, and you know that living things are nobler and more perfect than the non-living, and that there are three levels of living things: the level of angels, the level of man, a human being, and the level of beasts. Beasts rank at the bottom, and that every life which distinguishes them. For life lies in perception and in activity, yet beasts are imperfect in perception and in action. The deficiency in their perception lies in its being limited to the senses, and sensory perception is limited because it only perceives things by contact or proximity. Without contact or proximity, a sense faculty is cut off from perception. For taste and touch require contact, while hearing, sight, and smell need proximity. The senses are instantly cut off from perceiving any existing thing which cannot be conceived to be in contact or proximity to them. Furthermore, their activity is limited to what is dictated by passion or anger, and cannot be triggered by anything else, for they lack reason to summon them to activities which differ from the demands of passion and anger. As for the angels, theirs is the highest level because they are existent, or they are existence whose perception is not affected by proximity or distance, nor is their perception limited to what is conceivable as close by or far away, since proximity and distance are conceived for bodies, and bodies are the lowest of the categories of existing things. Furthermore, angels are too holy for passion and anger, so their activity is not dictated by passion or anger. Rather, what moves them to engage in activity is something more exalted than passion and anger, namely, to seek proximity to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to God Most High. So far as man is concerned, his level is midway between the other two, as though he were composed of bestial and angelic natures. Remember that Imam Ghazali in elsewhere in Ihya Ulumuddin, he says that the soldiers of Satan and the soldiers of the angels fight every day in the battlefields in his heart. It's a daily occurrence. Same idea. Bestial and angelic natures. At the beginning of his life, his bestial nature predominates, since the only perception he has at first is through the senses, perception which requires that he seek proximity to the thing sensed through pursuit and movement. Eventually, the light of reason dawns upon him, which disposes itself through the realms of heaven and earth, with no need for bodily motion, nor for seeking proximity or contact with what it perceives. Rather, its objects of perception are exempt from proximity or distance in space. Similarly, passion and anger, hold sway over him at first, and desires arise in accordance with what they dictate, until the desire to seek perfection appears in him, and he considers consequences and begins to resist the demands of passion and anger. If he conquers passion and anger to the point of controlling them, and they become too weak to move him or pacify him, he then attains a likeness to the angels. Again, I would like to read this. If he conquers passion and anger to the point of controlling them, and they become too weak to move him or pacify him, he then attains a likeness to the angels. Likewise, if he weans himself from the inflexibility of things imagined and perceptible through the senses, and accustoms himself to perceiving things too exalted to be attained by sense or imagination, he will achieve another likeness to the angels, for the specific properties of living things are perception and activity, and both of them are susceptible to deficiency, moderate status, or perfection. The more one emulates the angels in these specific properties, the more is one removed from one's bestial nature and comes close to the angelic. For the angels are close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and whoever is close to one who is close to in himself, close. And whoever is close to one who is close to in himself, close. You may say this teaching apparently points to affirming a likeness between man and God Most High, with one who conforms himself to Allah's perfections is made to be like him, whereas it is known by revelation and by reason concerning God, may he be praised and exalted, that naught is as his likeness, ليس كمثله شيء, that he does not resemble anything, nor does anything resemble him. Then I say, as Imam Al-Ghazali, the more you know the meaning of the likeness denied of God, subhanahu wa ta'ala, the more you will know that there is no likeness of him. There is no likeness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Nor should one think that sharing in every attribute requires that there be a likeness. When two contraries are so remote from each other that one cannot conceive of yet more distance between them, would you consider them to be like one another simply because they share in many attributes? As blackness shares with whiteness being an accident, a color perceived by sight, and other similar features, would you consider that one who says that God, great and glorious, exists but not in a subject, that he enjoys hearing, seeing, knowing, willing, speaking, living, power, acting, and that man is so like that, thereby likens God to creatures and affirms a likeness? Not at all. That is the way it is, for if it were, then every creature would bear a likeness to him, to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Since the least one can do is affirm a share in existence, and that instills the illusion of likeness. But a likeness is defined as sharing in a specific kind and equity. For even if a horse is extremely adroit, it still bears no likeness to a man, because they are of different species. It is only like a man in adroitness, which is an accident outside the quiddity, constituting the essence of humanity. A beautiful end to this paragraph, and inshallah we will continue reading tomorrow. Until then, سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.